All right, everybody. We are a little bit early, but wanted to just give you a heads up that we will be starting to hear the show in a moment.
Bring the music down.
I know he hasn't started yet.
Yeah, but you did. And you're gonna get. Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to. Because you're okay.
And there we are.
Yeah, he's.
All right, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, if that's where you are. Maybe good evening. This is Nikki Burnett. This is Taste Life Radio, streaming live on KUHS Denver. Good stuff. So I'm excited about today. This is a fun experience for me because if you happen to have seen me ever on the radio show before I had my own, Lowell, Dr. Lowell.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
is who brought me in the radio, and I would be on his shows periodically, and it was always so much fun. So, yeah, thanks for coming.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah,
it's time because everybody has to eat, right?
Everybody does have to eat.
Yeah, so it's. And I kind of question the eating habits these days of not only myself but the people I work with, and you're always a great resource for me to help them. And you've helped me, so
awesome.
I have a testimonial.
You do
for you. So
awesome. I love that. Thank you.
This is the person right here, functional nutritionist, par excellence.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So, as you know, this is a show that we want to have some fun. We want to talk truth. We want to get the real deal out there to the best that we can. We know science changes, but we want to give you the information that we have today to the best of our ability and just have some fun with it. And so today we're going to talk a lot about performance and sports, and I'm going to talk as much about sports as I know how, which isn't very much. So that's where you get to come in.
Sorry, I must laugh.
But first, as always, gratitude. What are we grateful for today? And so mine's a little bit selfish today because we've been working on putting a fence up for several years. And this weekend, we will now have 90% of the fence finished. And I'm so grateful for it because now there's some privacy and we don't have to worry about the dogs. And it's beautiful. And it's a project that we did, my husband and I mostly did together, and we got along really well. And I know, and it's been really, really good. And so we have great neighbors, so we've been able to share with the neighbors. So I'm really grateful for the fence and for good neighbors and an amazing husband. What about you?
How can you top that?
I know.
Where do I go from there? I could just have, gratitude with attitude, I suppose.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. So recently, as everybody knows, there's a lot of things going on in the world that we don't have any control over, and yet seem to be influencing us in a dramatic way. Whether you want to accept that or not, it seems to be influencing us. So I'm grateful for the people that are out there, literally on the streets, doing what they need to do to raise the consciousness of those who seem to think they have the control, but maybe they don't. And I'm hoping that those like Saida out in MCOR in New York City, MCOR is in the county of New York that had the greatest amount of per capita COVID cases. And they are in the midst of both elderly as well as kids. It's a really dynamic environment. And she is the executive director of a community center. And I had a chance to talk to her yesterday, and I'm grateful for her and her efforts in making sure that kids are taken care of, and that grandpas and grandmas are well looked after and respected.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you. Cool. All right, so let's get into the fun stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So first, I want everybody else to know, because I already know, about you, who you are, what you do, why you do what you do, where you came from. Yeah. All of the fun stuff about Dr. Lowell.
Well, look, I was raised on a farm, so from a nutritional standpoint, I've learned from literally the ground up. And a comedian. Yeah, well, you never know. I've been accused of not being too funny. But one of the things that really grounds me in that history is the senses. And as I talk on my show, I relate to the skills section of all 5 senses. So when I was a kid in the springtime, at this time of the year, I would literally lay on the black dirt.
Nice.
Mainly because I was so tired from growing, from cultivating. My dad had an acre for a garden. an acre.
Wow.
Oh yeah, it was insane.
I'm so jealous. That's amazing.
Well, a farmer is what do we do? We've
Yeah.
got acres and acres of land, so we just make this huge garden. And my mom was a canner, and so nothing went to waste. But for me, in the springtime, after we cultivated the garden and got it ready, the smell of black dirt just seemed to kind of anchor me in. So from there, I just kept the science thing going, and I have been engaged in science all my life, scientific mindset, scientific theorist, and that caused me to be thirsty for knowledge. So, went on to college, played basketball, played sports at the Division I level, loved sports. My dad was a coach, so I had that hanging with me. And eventually, I got my master's in education and became an administrator in education over the years. And then I just wasn't done yet. so I went on.
Yeah. Never be done.
Oh, you can't be done. You got to be. Your curiosity is my curse.
Yeah.
So I went on and got my PhD in educational leadership and human development. And throughout all that process, I'm meeting young people and administrators and coaches and general managers of franchises, and constantly trying to connect them to what and who will make them better. And that, in essence, is my mantra for my clients, the people I hang out with, is I say, I want to know about any person or anything that's going to influence your ability to be your best.
I love that.
So here I am today doing, and that's what this is all about at KUHS radio and television, is to use this as a platform to communicate those messages, identify and reinforce through that identification what is the right way to get things done, which is one of the reasons why I'm so attracted to you and what you do, is because it's a key component to development of the human body and mind, that connection. And there's lots of disconnects, let me tell you.
Yeah.
We're hopefully going to talk a little bit about that today.
Yeah.
But that's where I come from, kind of a natural place.
Well, and just to throw out, the information on your show too, is his show is tomorrow.
Yep.
So it's every week at 11.
That's sign language, by the way.
Okay, good.
Just, 11 o'clock. 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time.
11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time.
Yes.
And it's a great show. I think it's a great show. I was on it.
Yeah.
No, it is a great show.
See?
One of my favorite things is to see you on the show and then start texting you and giving you all the time.
Oh, I love that. So influential.
Oh, good stuff. He starts talking about Gatorade. I'm like, what are you doing to me?
Yeah. It was a reference point. Pedialyte didn't come to mind right off the bat.
Good.
Sugar. She's getting it through the sugar thing.
Yeah, you have to.
Well, like I said, the show's a platform to offer information and guidance in a very comprehensive and yet quick and efficient way. And hopefully it generates new business and new insights for people to take advantage of.
Yeah.
Like tomorrow, we're going to talk a little bit about the influence of CBD as an anti-inflammatory and how that works. And by the way, I'm oversimplifying what CBD is and the cannabinoids that are in it as it relates to inflammation. It can do much more than that. And much of that science we have very little knowledge about. Good knowledge, but very little, because there's so much more to be gained about it. And the influence of cannabinoids on our endocrine system, our neurologicals, the muscles. I'm going to be focused on muscles tomorrow. And what CBD is an anti-inflammatory for those bumps and bruises. It's getting into the season, right?
Yep.
Or we hope so.
Yep.
Or we can go out and continue the hiking, go horseback riding, mountain climb, whatever you do. And if you get a bump or a bruise, know that CBD is an alternative to anything else that might be, God forbid, addictive. Or
just dangerous, even your non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, Advil, things like that. Those we take them so regularly and so much, and they're so incredibly damaging.
Liver, hurt the
liver, the kidneys, the stomach. I mean, it's tough stuff. So, and the worst, I have to put this out there, totally off topic, but the worst is acetaminophen. If you can avoid taking Tylenol, avoid it. It is not good for you. It's exceptionally hard on the liver. So if we can do things like CBD, turmeric, curcumin, things like that help with inflammation, then actually do a good thing to the body, then that's
let's go natural, people.
That's what we want to do, right?
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
All right, so real quick, again, this is KUHS Radio, KUHSdenver.com, streaming live. One of the top stations in the country, by the way. So good stuff going on here. Thanks to Henry. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about Rightful, one of our sponsors. And Rightful is an amazing company, actually right along the lines of what we're talking about. It's got turmeric or curcumin. It's got a little bit of CBD in it. But it is an anti-inflammatory. It is a pain supplement. It's a liquid. There's a morning. There's an evening. It's got 8 plant-based nutrients in it. It's an amazing product, and I talk about it every week. But it's being sold at the pain management clinics, which is how it's working so well that allopathic medicine is taking it in, which is pretty cool stuff, right? We want to start to see that mesh between the holistic or the functional or the naturopathic and the allopathic, right? So all good stuff.
Such big words. She's just, it's natural stuff. See how that works? I make fun, but I'm all in it. I'm on board all of it.
You got it. So yeah, morning and an evening, and for pain itself, give it a little bit of time, but it's working really quickly for a lot of people for sleep, for focus, which is me. And just, for calm and, moving through your day well. So great product. I love these guys. Go to rightful.com and you can put in the code TLN20 and you can get a discount. So it's good stuff. I've got people on it who are just in love with it. So good days, good times.
Gotta love it.
All right. So
Gotta love it.
We were talking about the brain-body disconnects. And so as a performance coach, these are the things you see a lot, and I see it in a different way, right?
Yep.
But they always come together. So I'm curious, when you're working with your athletes, or you're working with you also work with elite athletes who are moving into the corporate world, right?
Yep.
So from the youngsters to those who are no longer really the athletes, but there's a lot of disconnect there with the brain and the body. So what are you seeing, and how do you manage that?
Well, before I get to that, let me just make sure that regardless of the age, the comments I'm going to make now, it's common responses. So whether you're a mom and dad of kids, or you're a coach or general manager of adults who act like kids, but nonetheless, they're adults, they're bigger, they're going to have the same kind of symptoms that I see as relates to a diminishment of performance. And that's what I call brain fog. They're going to look like they're kind of out of it. And some people say, well, you're not an early morning person. So if we see them in the morning, typically when we see them before workouts, they're kind of lethargic, and they're kind of, sleepy-eyed, looking like, and that's a camouflage to what's really going on. So I take a look at things like skin tone. I ask them about, I try to get, not that I'm a pH monitor, but I want to know what their skin feels like. So I'll shake hands with a whole new intent.
That's so interesting.
Yeah,
or
I'll grab them by their palms with my fingers, and then my thumbs are on the tops of their hands, and I'll rub the tops of their hands to see if I can sense any scaling of their skin, any kind of moisture there. And typically in the mornings, you shouldn't feel like somebody's got sweaty hands. Mm-hmm. It's just not part of that. And if it is, that's a sign that something's not going right.
Interesting.
And not going right directly to nutrition or chemistry or both.
Sure.
So for me, I'm looking for brain fog. There are other things I'll hopefully have a chance to mention, but brain fog is the big one for me. So I know that you're ready to go. Mm-hmm. And if you're not, that means we might have to elongate the prep time.
Yeah.
And the warm up. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you right now, strength and conditioning coaches, trainers, and then the head coaches, they don't know about this stuff, and nor do they want to. Oh. They get in it. Let's go. Let's go.
Yeah.
My best stories are about when I first got into big team exercising, where I was with the team for the entire seasons. I'd ask the coach, well, how much time do I have to get the teams prepared with the training and stuff? 15 minutes. Oh yeah, really?
Nice.
The whole team, 15 minutes of time to get them ready to be good thinkers and focused, and their brain and body connected. We've modified that.
Good. Seems to make sense.
Yeah, got into the system and they listened to me. So brain fog is the thing, to first look at that brain-body connection.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. In my mind, when I think of, getting up in the morning and how you feel, it's sleep. What you have for dinner? What do you eat regularly? What's your home life like? What are your stress levels? All of these things can come in where I would think for anybody, but particularly athletes who are supposed to be at the top of their game, all of these things can start to affect them physically, mentally, emotionally. So they come in, they can be dragging, they can have the brain fog, they can not be focused, things like that. So that's really interesting. I was doing a little bit of research before we got together, and one of the things that stood out to me was that this doctor says brain health or brain function, I guess, is a reflection of lifestyle. So if you're coming in foggy, if you're not with it, if you've got these things going on that aren't normal and aren't right, what are you doing? What's happening?
Well, and look, there's lots of press around certain sports and traumatic brain injury or trauma to brain, right? And there are many players that I was just asked the other day by the therapist I work with with brain trauma, and she says, do you happen to have any thought about kids, high school kids that you may have seen that you think had brain trauma but nobody diagnosed it? I said, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Things like, if there's brain fog, I will look for balance. So when I'm hanging onto their hands, I'll ask them to squeeze my hands. If I have an indication from their skin tone that there's something wrong, I'll say, squeeze my hands. If I get uneven pressure by either one of the hands, then I'm going to ask them to walk on a straight line, close their eyes and walk, and see if they got any kind of vertigo sensations. Because then I start getting these reinforcement of all these things happening. I'm going, this person has a scar on their brain. So the research that you looked at is very, very meaningful to me, because it means the pressure between the space in the brain tissue and the cranium is regulated by what you do to your body. Chemistry, the pH, and so what you drink, how much you eat, when you eat, and how much you eat. So then I will bring you in to change those behaviors.
Right.
When I identify it, I mean, I can talk about it fairly accurately, but I'm not the person who's the expert on creating the strategies and systems to get them to change eating habits, the food they eat in those habitual processes, so that I can get and give it to the coaches, this athlete who is properly balanced, who is able to literally walk a straight line without any hesitation. And not that we do this, but the extreme would be, okay, you're doing fine, let me push you a little bit, because we push to limits. Get on the top of this fence and walk this fence without looking at the fence. Or now we'll use a balance beam. That's an over extreme example. I'll use a balance beam and ask them to close their eyes and try to walk the balance beam, because now they're not just regulating their brain, they're regulating their brain to connect to the body and feel the board, sense the direction of the board. If that happens, brain chemistry is good, physiological signaling through the your nervous system, and that your blood is pumping in the right way to activate those very subtle and sublime muscle impulses. So it's a continuum, and it starts with brain-body connection.
Yeah, it is. And so I have a couple of things that they're sort of jumping out at me. And one, when we're talking about brain health and athletics and these brain injuries. And we talked about this last week on Dr. Sam's show, but these brain injuries, these concussions, are immediate leaky gut. It signals the gut, and it immediately creates leaky gut. So what's happening with these athletes who have multiple concussions are not addressing all problems that come along with the situation. We're seeing autoimmune disease go sky high. We already know that autoimmune disease, one of the first things that happens is there's inflammation, there's leaky gut, and then in time it can create autoimmune disease. One of the things we talked about was Muhammad Ali how much brain damage did he have? How much gut damage did he have? And he was poor guy.
Damn, I'm in bad shape then.
Yeah.
I need to sit down.
Yeah.
Oh, I am. So
we worked on your gut. You're
yeah,
good.
well, seriously, she did, and I can attest to the benefits that it gave me. But and again, continue with that process. Muhammad Ali is a great example. There are now, regretfully, post, the incident, we could have dealt with it earlier. His neurological issues with Parkinson are more than likely directly related to all the connections that Nikki just said about brain trauma, inflammation issues, autoimmune issues, and then leaky gut, because that's a critical mass of things happening that eventually works on his nervous system. So there were failures.
Oh yeah.
And he obviously worked for years. He had those failures. Now, if somebody would have gotten that connection, 20 years ago,
Right.
he may have had a more fulfilled quality of life than what he did. And I'm not saying he didn't. Great family, a lot of love there, but he is one example that should be looked for in many, many people.
Right. Yeah.
Football is an example of that, but I'll also ask people to take a look at moms and dads to watch their kids after contests. So, for example, here's a brain-body disconnect. If you have a young athlete, let's say it's a 14-year-old female, and she's a soccer player. And by the way, these references are based on some true facts. And she gets done with a match, and you say to her, hey, let's go, we're going to go get some hamburgers. Get the protein in, at least within 2 hours after that. I'm not professing that hamburgers are the best way to do it, but get it.
Grass-fed burgers are the best.
Well, finding a grass-fed burger place is not easy to do. Yeah, look what she's telling you. Oh, let's run out to McDonald's for a gluten-free bun.
No, I don't think that's what I said.
Not going to happen. I said it because I know it's not going to happen. But that's what you should do to feed the body. Now, if that young lady says to you, Mom, I'm not hungry. Wrong. Especially if you know that typically she is hungry. Not because it was after a big contest, because that's just who she is. That's her metabolism. So any athlete that comes away from a workout, like a contest or a practice, and they say that they have a diminished appetite, that's okay, but they still will eat. But if they have a diminished appetite and they just don't want to eat anything, that's a sign for you. That's them telling you something about what's going on. And here's my point about brain trauma. It's not just direct contact to the brain. If that young player had fallen during a match on this turf that's underlayment by concrete, they're neck whips. So they can get, I have wide receivers at the pro level that have brain injury on the spinal cord at the lower part of their cranium because of the whiplash effect of just falling sideways on the turf, and their neck and shoulders go bink bink, and they don't have the same symptoms, but they might not want to eat anything. They may not want to even drink anything because of what it does to their chemistry, their brain chemistry, and how that makes them feel. So be aware of those things, and in highlighting when and how much nutrition. So I'm not going to say force the child to eat, but make sure that they get some good electrolytes in their body, amp up the magnesium and zinc in their system, because those are chemicals that are going to help the brain chemistry in there, and then see what they'll do in a few hours after that for eating.
Yeah, and I think that's smart. And in my mind, and it's not my expertise, but going deeper. I mean, if you have symptoms like that, what's happening? That's the point where you want to understand: is there damage that maybe even the doctors don't see? Is there something that needs to be addressed? Do you need to see the chiropractor? Do you need to start doing some testing to understand, has it created a leaky gut situation? Do we need to address things now? Because now's the time to do it, not in a year, 10 years, 20 years, when we're like, why is this happening? I don't understand these symptoms. I don't understand this pain. I don't understand this autoimmune disease. I don't understand what's going on. When 20 years prior, you might have been able to help the situation. So jump on top of it.
And let me circle back to the references that I kind of made fun of a little bit. I don't want to be misunderstood by this. Idiopathic, homeopathic, naturalist, medicine is they're more insightful. And I'm not trying to discredit anything on the traditional medical field, because there's a lot of great doctors out there and health professionals. But the reference that Nikki made to those areas of health and well-being come at things from a different list of questions, a different sensitivity to observation and inquiry than the traditional doctors do. Because the traditional doctors have a whole other agenda that they look for that's more, I hate to say this, but more pharmacological. You know, they're looking at the pills.
The way they're trained.
Yeah, and so understand that and get other opinions when you don't see your child or the athlete you're working with responding in a way that facilitates the connection that you normally see with them. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a great point. You know, allopathic medicine is amazing in acute care. So if you have a child or yourself, an elite athlete, and you have a concussion, go to the doctor. You might need meds, and you might need to understand, what's going on. But then there's a point to where moving more into functional medicine, I do functional nutrition, that we are looking at things a little bit differently, a little bit deeper. The testing is sometimes a little bit different. We look at sometimes the numbers a little bit differently. And so, but it's all works together. I work with allopathic medicine because it's important to co-manage when we have to. But yes, there are certainly some differences, and there's always what I simply put. For me, it's always asking why.
Yeah.
And not saying, okay, let's cover it up. Hey, Jeff. But it's always asking why. And let's keep digging to understand why. And then we start to allow the body to balance itself based on what we find. Okay, perfect.
I love it.
Me too. All
Jeff,
right.
hello.
It's a good friend of mine. We met in Waco many, many years ago. He was actually on the show with me.
That'd be Texas, wouldn't it?
That would be Texas.
Is this the musician?
Yes.
Okay, see? I watched, Jeff. You're pretty good, too. Just saying.
All right, cool. Well, let's take a quick break and talk about where we are. We are streaming live, KUHS Denver. Awesome stuff, yeah. And so we also have another sponsor, Zymogen, who's a great company. I appreciate them so much because they don't let terrible products go. They don't let even off products go to market. If they, if it's going through and they see something is there's a problem with their product, they won't let it leave their facility.
What kind of products?
All kinds of products. Well, so this one is I5. So functional foods, they do, all kinds of stuff.
So I can't get tires from them, though?
No.
So not those kind of products?
Supplements.
Oh, supplements.
Supplements.
Oh, okay.
He's teaching me.
It takes me a while to get there.
No, you're teaching me to be more clear because I'm not always very clear.
There's not a lot of smart people out there. I have to keep it. Just kidding.
Anyway,
Just kidding.
Yeah, so amazing supplements. Good stuff. You can go to my website and there is a link on there. It's a whole scripts link, but it will take you to where you can purchase the supplements on your own. They've got immune boosting.
TasteLifeNutrition.com.
Did it again.
Just saying,
I just need to do
I
this
put it
for
across
you all the
here,
time.
but I don't have enough room.
Not sure what to say to that.
Yeah, you don't. You shouldn't. It's just self-evident.
So
I'm a slender beast.
click on the link, put in Radio 5 for your discount. They've got workout products for the gym. One of my favorites called ATP Ignite Workout. It's awesome. And immune boosting supplements. They've got women supplements and men supplements and kid supplements and the whole thing. And a lot of their stuff, especially their fish oil, I use for the dogs as well. So good company, great stuff. Go to my website, tastelifenutrition.com, and check it out. All right, cool. So moving on.
What are you doing now?
Yeah. So let's talk about mental toughness.
Whoa, I've been accused of not having that very often. Whoa, so how can I be an expert in it?
So, yeah, what is it? So you have to be mentally tough. I think in a lot of situations. So athletics for sure. You've got crowds and you've got pressure and you've got performance issues or good or bad, right? But then, in business, you have to be mentally tough.
Yeah, and mental toughness is the phrase for process. that gets us to being defined as resilient. So mental toughness is that protocol for being resolved in pursuing something. So if you get pushed, how quickly do you come back from the push? That's basically the definition of resiliency.
Right.
And the process of becoming mentally tough helps you to be quicker at getting back from that push. I like to use the Pillsbury Doughboy as my example, because when you push him, he comes back very quickly, and then he gives you a giggle. But at the end, isn't that kind of nice to think about?
It's really cute, yeah.
Because my mental toughness exercises are not that pleasant.
Really? What do you do?
Well, we get a little bit nasty with the things. So, for example, if we take a wide receiver, I will actually have them run the route, and when they make the break on the route, which is when they're supposed to catch the ball, they have their eyes closed.
Oh.
So you're forced to be pretty resolute and trust that you're going to catch the ball in your hands and not in your face.
How often do they actually catch the ball?
Oh, it gets higher and higher.
Okay.
But initially, when they first hear me and I ask them to do that, they go, "I can't do that," which is kind of the first simple example of your mental toughness isn't really high on the scale. When you say, "I can't," the can-do attitude is one of the first places I look for conclusion that you've gotten mentally tough. So there are lots of exercises, like for a hockey player. I'll take a defenseman in particular who tends to skate backwards, and there are certain identifiers, physical identifiers on the ice that they know about. There's the blue line, there's the face-off circles, there's center court, and so on. So I say, look, go down to the circle, close your eyes, and skate backwards, and then stop every time you think there's the blue line. Every time you think there's center line, then the next blue line, and the next circle. Again, I can't do that. And then they realize they can, because then I give them things like a whistle. I'll blow a whistle when they're at the spot. And then I say, okay, now you got that. You're getting better mental toughness. Now go faster. So basically what we do in the mental toughness exercising process is put them in situations they're familiar with, so we can build on that and build the confidence, and then give them audio as well as sensory indicators that they've succeeded. With golfers, for example, I use biofeedback tools to let them know when they've hit the sweet spot on a stroke.
Okay.
And music will play in their ear. Their favorite music will play when they actually have hit that. So I'll actually have them put a blindfold on with the headband and the earpiece in, and they'll try to drive the ball. The ball is right there in front of them. It's there at the same place every time. And then again say, well, I can't do that. And they do. And sometimes early on it's off the toe or off the club in a bad way. And then all of a sudden their brain starts to connect with their body, and they become mentally tough. And mentally tough is the best measure is consistency.
Okay.
That they deliver the same thing every time, and they're in control of the intensity of the changes. Because each challenge presents a different degree of challenge, which they then have to respond to, like the Pillsbury Doughboy.
Right.
So I don't use that example with any football players, because they kind of go, "Are you kidding? I'm a Pillsbury Doughboy?" No. But little kids love it.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And then if their mom lets me, I poke them. Because then they're the Pillsbury. No, never mind. I don't do that. Very safe. Mentally tough. So mental toughness is a good way, the process is a good way to test whether the nutritional components that we've added to someone have worked. Because to be mentally tough, your brain's got to be sharp.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm taking senses away from them, and if they're not fully engaged and healthy from a nutritional standpoint, functionally, it ain't going to happen. And we're going to work really hard trying to make it happen, and it ain't going to happen.
Right.
And I've learned that lesson over time as I learned more about nutrition and the value of food and how it can dramatically influence, but even more dramatically diminish capability of performance at the highest level.
Yeah. Sorry, I have something in my
That's
eye.
all right.
I'm focused, but a little not focused. I hate it when that happens.
I don't have to deal with that mascara thing. It's
Man.
It's okay.
Cool. So it's interesting. Mental toughness. Again, I was doing, just kind of looking into, what you do and all of the fun things. And so one of the things that came up was neurotransmitters. And I thought that was really interesting, because I love the science of neurotransmitters and brain health. I'm not great at it. It's not something that I touch much in practice, at least early on, maybe later if there's still some work that needs to be done. But what I was reading was people who have different neurotransmitter amounts, like higher dopamine, lower serotonin,
Yep.
vice versa, that kind of thing,
Yep.
because of what they're eating, where they are in life, what they're not meeting their needs, whatever the case may be, they're trained differently.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's so interesting to, you have to train well to build the neurotransmitters and also work with the neurotransmitters that you have, and then what am I saying? And then you have to, each person is individualized, is really what I mean, because that's how I practice, but it really seems that it has to be that way in all aspects of life, including if you're an elite athlete and you're training, you have to train for the athlete.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's an example of that.
Mm-hmm.
Peyton Manning.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Peyton Manning, everybody knows he's pretty good at what he did, or does. I don't know if what he did. But he's still a pretty good dad and husband and brother and son. That being said, in that way, seriously, he has his own levels of chemistry, the ones you mentioned, dopamine, serotonin, yada, yada, yada,
Mm-hmm.
that influence the nervous system for your ability to respond and amp it up and be more aware and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in addition to that, when Peyton Manning says it takes 10,000 hours to create a neurological synapse that's going to repeat the actions at the highest level that you want to perform in it, he's not wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the number might vary from one person to another because of the chemistry,
Right.
chemistry differences. So we can't really rely on that oversimplified phrase of 10,000 hours. If you repeat something 10,000 hours, you're going to get it locked into your body neurologically to deliver. Not false at all, but there's some margins of error. One is everybody's neurological synapses and neurological pipelines are different. They are unique for you.
Yep.
So I might have a gap between my fingers this big for throwing a football, and Peyton Manning might have it that big, which is why he's at the pro level and better than me. Now I might have a better synapse for delivering my footwork or my speed because my brain is doing that, and I'm designed. I'm built to do that really well. In either case, the chemistry's got to be good.
Right.
To jump that and to ignite it and to use the 10,000 hours example to make new ones and stronger ones so that the behavior reproduces itself over and over again. Coaches tend not to know about that neurological structures are different. So they tend to brush every player with the same strategy.
Yeah. That's tough because you would think, I mean, how much better could somebody be if you're actually training for that person?
Yeah, so I'm big on data, understanding
Yep.
the player before we get them on the field. That's many reasons why organizations and teams engage me is that I go through that data gathering piece and get information from them about who that person uniquely is and what intrinsically drives them. Because with those measurements, I can get an understanding of the neurological systems and the structures and the differences between those people. You know, one person's curiosity is really, really high and another person's is not, and they're both on the same team. Well, which one of them would I have in a leadership role when the leadership role requires the mental toughness to be inquisitive,
Right.
to ask questions, to want more answers? Well, better not be this one.
Right.
So that information I give to coaches so they can be better at substituting players on the field, making greater teams in corporate America, so that you can give yourself a fairly calculated high probability of success.
Yep. So along with that, and then kind of going into, a little bit of my world, when it comes to mental toughness, and then what can help to create that. So we talk about in nutrition, the microbiome a lot, and if your microbiome's healthy, then your immune system's healthy, your serotonin levels, your neurotransmitters are healthy. So I'm curious how often, I guess I'm curious about the food that you see your athletes eating, and are there, because I'm assuming a lot of them, there's some focus, but not a lot of focus. I don't really know if that's true or if it's even the right focus, if there is a focus. And, is there a focus on things like the microbiome to get those people or allow them to stay at that elite level and keep them healthy and mentally tough?
there's a lot of stuff there. Simply put it with this example. A college athlete goes to a training table during the season or during the summer, doesn't matter. They all have training tables. They go into the university cafeterias, and the schools that think they're doing what you're asking them to do will have these color-coded cards and barcodes on the cards. And the athletes will have an app that they can then scan it, and it'll say, that's for you. Okay, good. So they can, and there'll be instructions there about how much of a serving they should take of that particular item. Okay. And they'll go to the next one, they'll go, that's not for you. So they create systems to help guide the athletes through this process of learning about foods. Now the hope is that maybe once they leave college and go on to the pros, they'll hang on to some of those habits and that instruction that they got about nutrition. Now the presumption is that system was the right system.
Right.
That had the right foods in the system that they're delivering from.
Yep.
So I'm not going to opine on that. I'm going to hope that it was and is, but I also know what I see.
Yeah.
And when they become a pro or they leave college and go on to their job, and I can keep in contact with them, because many times I'll get them as corporate clients after their college careers, and I'm going, why are you eating that? What happened to you?
Yeah.
Oh, I just couldn't stand that, because it's not something that's familiar to them because of the other piece that doesn't happen. They don't explain it to them.
Okay.
These kids are entitled and enabled in so many different ways, they don't have to ask questions about anything.
Wow.
Food, housing, clothing, everything is supplied for them. All they are asked to do is deliver on the field.
Yeah.
Now, that's more prevalent in the bigger sports. So if you get down into tennis and soccer, and even in some cases, some schools at the college level basketball, it's not as rigorous. They're looking at the whole person, and they're taking more time in the things you really want them to do.
Yeah.
But in the bigger programs with more money, it's speed of delivery. Make it happen. And they don't necessarily think about the kid, which is unfortunate.
That is unfortunate.
Yeah. And yet they go through the motions and make it look like they're doing the right thing. So there are times I see it right, and sometimes I see it wrong.
Yeah.
And typically it's mass. It's like the Coneheads. Massive amounts of alcoholic beverages. No, that's not true. Here's my real example. Lots of meat, lots of carbs, lots of fruit. They put them into these categories that sound like they're okay, but they're not looking at the microbiome. They're just...
they're not taking it down that
No.
really deep enough. And I would assume it's also, well, no, I guess you answered that question. I was going to say very generalized, but maybe not very
It's specific, but it may not be the right specific components.
Yeah.
Because somebody in the nutrition department at the college is going through a project. And the athletic department, they coincidentally needed a program.
Yep.
Doesn't necessarily mean it fits, because guess what? The basketball team, the women's soccer team have different needs than the football team.
Yeah.
But they may not change the offerings within the system.
Interesting. That was going to be one of my questions too, is the different strategies for different ages and different genders. I would assume that there would have to be.
Yes, then there's a but. Many times, especially with the female side of the athlete, both professional and amateur, they really get after it on their own. I don't, in general terms, I don't have a lot of encouraging needed to be done with the females regarding nutrition.
That's why most of my practice is female. That's just what we do. It's weird.
So they're curious about things, and some of it's because of the way we socialize them.
Okay.
Female versus male, which I regret, and that's a huge swing for me with my male clients, is getting them to think. I say this to them, literally. I say this to them. You got to think like a girl, because you're limiting. Even though you don't have as much of that feminine chemistry in you, you gotta bring that forward and think like a girl to be more astute in certain issues, both in the social side of things as well as the clinical and nutritional side of things, because they're missing stuff.
Yeah.
And eventually they're going to be on their own. Nobody's going to be there, handing out the clothes and the food and the housing. They've got to think through it. So I don't have as much trouble with the women. They're more curious. If there's a mistake to be made, they're going to find it.
Interesting. Okay, so I'm going to back up a minute and ask a question, just because I'm curious. is professional, I guess, anywhere in the athletic world, whatever you deal with, is there still a thing as carb loading? Do they still do that?
Oh, God, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Well, and look, there are certain sports that they were the ones that started it. Distance runners, cross-country runners, Nordic skiers,
Okay.
because they felt that the carb loading with sugar was a way to put in calories that would be sitting there latent and ready to explode with energy at some moment that you
Right.
needed them.
Right.
And that's a way oversimplification
Yeah.
of what really happens, but that's
Yeah.
not too far off. Now that's been modified and changed, which is why we have kind bars and all these different nutritional protein things and the drinks and the gels and all that stuff. And there's a whole other show on that in itself. But yeah, it still exists because, again, they want things to happen fast
Yeah.
and get results. And they want to be first at being there,
Yep.
wherever there is. And the there is a constant inquiry. Pick your category, whether
Right.
it's nutrition or the X's and O's. Where's the there? How can we be different and better
Yep.
first?
Yeah.
So, yes, carb loading is still a thing. Protein is also a thing. Sugar is not a thing, interestingly enough, despite the fact that some teams still have Gatorade and
Yeah.
Powerade.
Yeah.
But that's tend to have some economics to it because
Sure.
they get
Yeah.
contracts.
Yep. Yep.
But there's a high sensitivity to sugar and the use of that or the lack thereof. Hydration is a big topic from whatever the source might be. Most are on the right bandwagon with just water is good.
That's good.
Don't replace it with anything else but that. For me, it's caffeine.
Yeah. For a lot of people.
You know, and the power drinks, the monster drinks, that's the caffeine thing. So caffeine's a sensitivity that's out there. It's all good stuff, but I come back to our first point when we started off. Mind-body connects, and what influences the disconnect to happen.
Yeah.
And all of those are in that mix.
Okay. All right. So, last thing I want to get into is activity. How do you know when you're dealing with your athletes of any age how much activity they need, or when they've had too much or not enough?
I'm going to reverse that
Okay. Great.
and say, especially to moms and dads, what does the child look like when they've had enough? Because as you move up from the kids to the more high performance elite athlete status, where they're in college scholarships, then they go to pros, they become more their own regulator about what physical activity is all about. But the difficulty is they don't know how to stop.
Yeah.
And so at a young age, as mom and dads, you can help them know how to regulate themselves. So you give them a sense of feeling about their body and on when they need to rest. Because that's just as important as the physical activity. But to get the physical activity stopped is where I want to start.
Yeah.
So that they know about what that feels like, that barometer. Now, going back to the nutritional things we talked about, if brain chemistry and body chemistry are not in balance to the body, they're going to have a difficult time stopping.
Okay.
They're not going to know how to stop because their body's not helping them.
Yeah.
All the chemistry that's necessary for their brain to think through stuff and be sensitive to the cues they're getting aren't going to flip. And they're just not going to be there. So be aware as a mom and dad or as a young coach with young kids what that tired kid looks like. Because many of them will continue to play. It's like the thoroughbred. If you let a thoroughbred run, they'll kill themselves.
Yeah.
They'll run and run and run because they love to run. And you as the rider, the jockey, the trainer, you need to know how to hold them back and give them the signals and train them into that behavior so they don't kill themselves.
Yeah.
Now, we're not a thoroughbred. Well, metaphorically maybe. We're humans. We have reasoning. We think. So moms and dads, coaches,
Usually,
sometimes,
Yeah.
know how to recognize the signals to turn them off. Now, the amount of physical activity is many times directly related to the age group. In general terms, any child from like 5 or 6 years old into their pre-teens, that 10, 12-year-old range, girls, because of their body chemistry, dig this, they're different, guys. Did you know that?
Crazy, we are not the same.
Feminine
I
chemistry.
don't care what some people like to say.
Yeah.
We are not the same.
Feminine chemistry tends to let them know sooner, and they listen. Guys, we tend to be more like that thoroughbred metaphor, and we'll continue to go until we literally fall over.
Yeah.
And that's not good. So I like to have in recreational programs or high school programs to encourage coaches and administration to mix the women and the men together, and so they get feedback. She's pretty stout and she's stopping. Well, maybe I ought to think about stopping. So they get signals from each other about what's the right pace.
Yeah.
But physical activity, you feed them, make them go work out. They go work out hard, get to exhaustion, feed them.
Yeah.
That's a simple way for me to integrate the nutritional side to physical activity.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, one of the interesting things, when it comes to the differences between men and women, again, sports nutrition, sports athletics is not my strength, but because of the way we're built, women, we tend to have more injuries, like more, our knees, blow your knees out, your ACL, MCL.
Well, you have more leverage. Your fulcrums are more powerful to those connective tissue areas because from your hips to your torso is longer, they get to bear children. We don't have that. Ours is shorter, guys, so we don't have the same leverage on our hips that you do because you've got a longer lever.
Yeah.
From hip to the top of your head, that's longer. And you're going to put more pressure on those areas. And the same thing with the knees. So what tends to happen is that, as you said, the connective tissue injuries, blowing your knees out, medial MCL and ACL injuries, hamstring pulls. Watch and look at the soccer teams. So what do you do about it? Well, in my area, when I talk to coaches about these differences, I say, in soccer, don't let them head the ball, especially the girls, before the age of 14. Train the technique, but don't let them hit because you're going to have neck issues.
Yeah.
And you could, in fact, have levels and degrees of brain trauma with the athletes. So be sensitive to that. The other part of it is coaches love me for this one. When I talk about taking the senses away, I ask coaches with girls in the soccer area, soccer, lacrosse, to go barefoot, play without your shoes on.
Okay. Ow. Oh.
Well, and here's why. Has anybody ever showed you how to strengthen your feet?
No.
No. We train big muscle. Your pecs and your glutes and your hamstrings and your calves and your biceps and traps and all that kind of stuff. But your feet are the first place where balance begins. So if you want them to be balanced and help protect the connective tissue in your ankles and your knees, you better have strong feet.
Yeah.
I mean, right down to your toes.
That makes sense, yeah.
So practice
those little muscles
without your shoes on, which is why it's very interesting how people like Walter Payton, back in the day, for those of you who don't, I dated myself. Walter Payton, running back, Chicago Bears, first to be seen running up sand dunes on Lake Michigan, barefoot. And he would run. There was a hill in Chicago at the training facility for the Bears that was grass, and he would run that barefoot.
Okay.
Because he kind of got into the strength of his feet. He had chronic ankles. Well, he got other benefits because of it. But so that's one way to help with that connective tissue thing. The other thing is green leafy vegetables. Improve that tissue area. Again, minerals and salts that improve the neurosynapses in those areas. Because circumember, tendons and ligaments are very, very tight, very, very dense material. Now there is circulation in there, but many times it's circulatory capillary systems that are on top of it.
You're right.
So it doesn't feed it within the tissue like within muscle. So you want to promote circulation in there. So the other thing that athletes themselves can do is massage those areas before you practice as a pre-warm-up. Your thumb, just like this, to the point of it doesn't feel very good.
We do that at the gym with like lacrosse balls and things like that, and it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, and it should be. That's your barometer. That little uncomfort, as much as you can stand it, that indicates you're getting it done. You're opening up that tissue because it's very dense tissue.
Yeah.
Those little rollers you have for your back and your hips and stuff, those are great for popping out the joints and getting everything aligned, but they're not going to get at that very fibrous, very dense tissue. That would be knees, and it's the top of your hips, where the crown kind of goes like that, right below that, stick your thumbs in there and just, it's where the glutes connect. There's a big connection point right there of ligaments. So,
just get in there.
yeah, that works really, really well. And then the deep tissue massage, for those of you, my athletes, they ask me all the time, what kind of massage should I get? I kind of like this one. I said, you're 300-pound lineman, buddy. That's not going to work. May feel good, nice and warm, smells really hot, but no, they need to get, stand on you.
Yeah,
get a small Chinese lady and just really get after it. No deference to any ethnicity, okay? It just means they're very small. They can. Okay, sorry. Ooh, slipped into some other zone.
We don't. It's okay.
Okay.
It's okay.
But you see, in my world, oh gosh, I can't tell you how many times I've been caught. I just, there's so society has changed for me so much. Back in the day, there were so many words that were said back in the day when I was in high school and college that you would have been crucified today. I mean, we think it was gym stuff, as some very ominous person once said, it's locker room talk.
Yeah.
Well, locker room talk has changed. Talk about mind-body connection. Holy cow.
Yeah, no kidding.
Oh.
All right, cool. So we are hitting the end of our time. Is there anything that we missed that you want to talk about?
I think just in conclusion of what we talked about is it's a sensitivity to the connection between mind and body. That's how we started. And we went through all the different places where that can be influenced so that you don't get foggy, you don't lose contact, you stay optimal. And we gave you some signs about how to identify that, both as a mom and dad, a coach, administrator, or franchise, to help those athletes be their best. Because ultimately that's your goal, right? It's player focused, help them be the best, make the connections between themselves and their teammates positive and healthy, and you get a chance to be a champion or earn a championship. But the real goal is every day work on those pieces that make you the best and hope that they connect with someone else.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I dig it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thanks
awesome.
for coming on.
Yeah.
How can people find you?
Well, that's interesting. 360mindset.com is my website. That's awesome place to go. Every Friday at 11 a.m. here with 360 Performance and my talk show. This week we're going to be talking to Kendra Freeman of Mendy Corporation, a manufacturer of natural-based CBD products. Other than that, just watch for bicycle riders on the streets. You might see me. I don't know. Who knows? I've been averaging about 130 miles a week.
Really?
Well, it's pandemic. It's a pandemic thing.
Okay.
No, I did that pretty much before too, unless I'm traveling. I get to travel for the first time in months.
Awesome.
On Monday, I'm going to Nashville, Tennessee.
Awesome.
Yeah, we're going to check out some things there and have some fun. But that's how you get a hold of me. 360mindset.com. Send me a note. You can do that. Sign up for some stuff. Watch some videos. It's all good stuff.
Yeah.
And keep watching this lady right here. She's good at what she does.
Thank you.
Always the best for you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So, how you find me? So, tastelifenutrition.com, the website. I'm going to get a sticker so I can put it right there. So I do have a free assessment on the website if you want to fill that out. It doesn't matter where you are in the country, out of the country. Fill it out, and happy to chat about the results of it whenever you have time. So do that. Also, Facebook. I try to do a bunch of Facebook Lives. And
can I still do that if I'm in the country, but I feel like I'm out of the country?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Yes. It works. And then, Twitter, Instagram, all of the places. Working really hard to do that. It's hard.
She's so social.
Social media is hard.
Yeah.
I'm old enough to where it's really hard. Anyway. All right. Thanks for coming. Go watch Lowell's show tomorrow, and then I'll be back again in 2 weeks. See y'all later.